In 427 BC, a man arrived in Athens. His name was Gorgias, and he made a claim so audacious, the entire city gathered to witness. He said, "Give me any topic, any position, any argument you want me to defend, and I will make you believe it. Not because it's true, but because I know how words work." The crowd laughed. They gave him impossible tasks. Defend the indefensible. Prove black is white. Make wrong sound right. And he did. Every single time. By sunset, the laughter had stopped. Because they realized something terrifying. Truth didn't matter. Only persuasion did. And Gorgias had mastered it. The Sophists, 5th century BC, ancient Greece. They weren't philosophers in the traditional sense. They were something else. Communication specialists, rhetoric masters, cognitive engineers. While Socrates and Plato searched for absolute truth, the Sophists studied something more practical. Human psychology. How the mind receives information, how beliefs are formed, how perception becomes reality. And they discovered something that would be suppressed for millennia. Language doesn't describe reality. Language creates it. Master language, and you master reality itself. For 2,000 years, history painted them as villains. Manipulators, deceivers, enemies of truth. But here's what they don't tell you. The Sophists understood human nature better than anyone before or since. And their techniques still work. Today. Right now. In every conversation you have. This is the Hidden Codex, where ancient wisdom meets modern power. Before we go deeper into what the Sophists actually taught, let me ask you something. Have you ever lost an argument, even though you were right? Have you ever watched someone completely wrong convince an entire room? Have you ever felt powerless because you couldn't find the right words? If you want to change that, if you're ready to learn what the masters of persuasion knew, subscribe to the Hidden Codex. Turn on notifications, because what comes next is not taught in schools. For a reason. Let's begin. The first thing the Sophists understood was this. People don't think logically. They think emotionally. Then justify it with logic. This is the foundation. The principle that changes everything. Protagoras, the first and most influential sophist, stated it clearly. Man is the measure of all things. Most people read that as philosophical relativism. It's not. It's a tactical observation about human perception. Here's what it actually means. Reality is not objective in human interaction. Reality is what each person perceives, and perception can be engineered. Protagoras discovered that in any conversation, there are not facts being exchanged. There are interpretations, frameworks, narratives, and whoever controls the frame controls the outcome. Let me show you how this works. Imagine two people arguing about a business decision. Person A says, "We should expand now, the market is growing." Person B says, "We should wait, the market is unstable." Same market, same data. Completely different frames. Person A frames expansion as opportunity. Person B frames expansion as risk. Neither is lying. But whoever's frame is accepted wins the argument. Not because they're right, because they controlled perception. The Sophists taught their students to recognize frames instantly, then dismantle them, then replace them with your own. This is not manipulation in the crude sense. This is understanding that all communication happens within a framework. And if you don't control it, someone else will. Protagoras would say, "On every issue, there are two opposing arguments." Notice he didn't say there is one truth. He said there are two arguments, because he understood that human beings don't access truth directly. They access arguments, stories, interpretations, and the better argument becomes the truth. So how do you apply this today? Next time you're in a conversation where you need to persuade someone, don't start with your argument. Start by identifying their frame. What story are they telling themselves? What interpretation are they operating from? What do they believe to be true? Once you see their frame, you have two options. 1. Work within their frame and shift it gradually. 2. Destroy their frame and replace it with yours. The Sophists were masters of both. And here's the key. Most people never realize you're doing it, because you're not arguing against their position. You're shifting the ground beneath it. Gorgias took this even further. He studied what he called the power of kairos. Kairos, Greek word, difficult to translate. It means the right moment, the opportune time, the perfect opening. Gorgias understood that the same words, said at different moments, have completely different effects. Timing is everything. You can say the exact right thing, at the wrong moment and fail completely, or say something mediocre at the perfect moment and change someone's mind forever. Here's what Gorgias taught. Every conversation has a rhythm, a flow, moments of tension and release, openings and closures. The master persuader doesn't speak constantly. The master persuader waits, watches, feels the rhythm, and strikes when the mind is most receptive. Gorgias called this psychagogia, leading the soul, not through force, but through perfect timing. He would enter a debate, remain silent while others argued, then wait for one specific moment, the moment of doubt. That microsecond when someone's certainty wavers, when their conviction cracks, when they think, wait, maybe I'm wrong. That's when Gorgias would speak. One sentence, perfectly timed, perfectly placed, and the entire argument would shift, because he understood something most people miss. Persuasion doesn't happen during certainty. Persuasion happens during doubt. Your job is not to create the perfect argument. Your job is to create the perfect moment for your argument. And here's how you do it. In conversation, most people are so focused on what they're going to say next. They miss the openings, the pauses, the hesitations, the moments when the other person's mind is actually open. So here's the practice. Next time you're trying to persuade someone, don't plan your entire argument in advance. Instead, listen for the opening. The moment when they say something like, I guess, well, maybe, I'm not sure, but that's true, however. These are cracks, moments of uncertainty. That's your kairos. That's when you speak, not before, not after, exactly then. And when you do, you don't attack their doubt. You gently widen it with a question, with a story, with a reframe. Gorgias wrote, "Speech is a powerful lord, which by means of the finest and most invisible body affects the divinest works." The finest and most invisible body. He's talking about timing, the invisible force that makes words work or fail. But the Sophists went even deeper. They discovered something that modern psychology wouldn't confirm for 2,000 years. Emotion overrides logic, every single time. This is what Thrasymachus understood better than anyone. Thrasymachus, the most controversial sophist. Plato hated him, painted him as a villain in the Republic. But here's what Thrasymachus actually taught. Logic is the language of the mind. Emotion is the language of decision. And decisions are not made by the mind. They're made by the body, the gut, the instinct. Then the mind creates a logical story to justify it. Thrasymachus would say, you can win every logical point in an argument and still lose. Because if you haven't moved them emotionally, you haven't moved them at all. This is not about manipulation. This is about understanding how humans actually work. Think about the last time you made a big decision. Did you list out pros and cons, calculate rationally, and decide? Or did you feel something first, then find reasons to justify it? Be honest. You felt it first. We all do. The Sophists knew this, so they didn't just argue logically. They engineered emotional states, not crudely, subtly, through tone, through pacing, through imagery, through storytelling. Here's what Thrasymachus taught his students. Before you make your argument, set the emotional state. If you want someone to take a risk, create excitement. If you want someone to be cautious, create concern. If you want someone to trust you, create safety. The words you say matter less than the state they're in when you say them. So how do you do this in practice? Let's say you're trying to convince someone to invest in a project. Most people start with data. Numbers, statistics, projections. All logical, all ignored, because the person is in a neutral or skeptical state. But if you understand Thrasymachus, you start differently. You tell a story, a brief story about someone who took a similar risk, and it changed everything. You paint the picture, not with data, with vision. You make them see it, feel it, want it. Then, once they're in that state of possibility, you introduce the logic, the numbers, the plan. And suddenly, the same data that would have been ignored now makes sense, because they're in the right state to receive it. Thrasymachus wrote, "The speaker who stirs passion controls the room. The speaker who relies on reason alone speaks to himself." This doesn't mean abandon logic. It means understand that logic works only after emotion has opened the door. And here's where the Sophists get truly dangerous. They understood something about language itself, something that gives you almost unfair power in conversation. Protagoras discovered it. He called it making the weaker argument appear stronger. This is what got the Sophists banned, because it revealed something uncomfortable. In any debate, truth is not what determines the winner. The winner is determined by who better understands language. Here's what Protagoras meant. Every argument has inherent strengths and weaknesses. Some positions are easier to defend, some are harder. But Protagoras proved that with the right rhetorical technique, you can make a weak position sound stronger than a strong position. Not through lies, through emphasis, through framing, through strategic use of language. Let me show you how this works. Take two positions. Position A, we should help people in need. Position B, we should not help people in need. Position A seems obviously stronger. But watch what Protagoras would do with position B. Helping people often makes them dependent. It removes their motivation to solve their own problems. True compassion is teaching self-reliance, not creating permanent dependency. By refusing to help, we force growth. We create strength. We respect their capability. Suddenly, position B doesn't sound cruel. It sounds wise. Not because it's true, because the language shifted. The frame changed. The emphasis moved. And this is the technique. You don't defend your position directly. You redefine what the debate is actually about. In the example above, the debate shifted from helping versus not helping to dependency versus independence. Different frame, different emotional resonance, different outcome. The Sophists taught, never accept the terms of the debate as given, redefine them. So in practice, when someone challenges you, your first move is not to defend. Your first move is to reframe. Let's say someone says, your idea is too risky. Don't argue, no, it's not risky. That's defensive. That keeps their frame. Instead, reframe. Risk is just opportunity that requires courage. Or, what's riskier? Trying something new or staying where we are? You've shifted the conversation. Now you're not defending risk. You're questioning safety. Completely different game. Gorgias wrote, nothing exists. If it did exist, it could not be known. If it could be known, it could not be communicated. Sounds like philosophical nonsense. It's not. It's a statement about the power of language. What Gorgias means is, objective reality may exist, but in human communication, reality is what you make people perceive through words. Control the words, control reality. And here's the uncomfortable truth the Sophists revealed. This works. Not sometimes. Always. Because human beings don't interact with reality directly. They interact with their interpretation of reality. And interpretation is shaped by language, by story, by frame. Now let's talk about the most powerful sophistic technique of all, the one they rarely taught publicly, the one that separates masters from amateurs. It's called dissoi logoi, contradictory arguments. Here's how it works. The Sophists discovered that the human mind respects complexity. When you present only one side, people instinctively resist, because it feels like manipulation. But when you present both sides, then explain why your side is better, people lower their defenses, because you seem fair, balanced, trustworthy. This is the technique. State your opponent's argument better than they can, then dismantle it. Not aggressively, surgically. Here's the structure. Some people believe opposing view, and I understand why, because legitimate reason for opposing view. That makes sense. However, what they miss is your counter, and here's why that matters. Deeper implication. You're not attacking. You're elevating the discussion, and in doing so, you position yourself above the argument, as the one who sees both sides, who understands complexity, who has transcended simple thinking. The Sophists would use this technique to devastating effect. They would argue both sides of a debate in the same day, not because they believed nothing, but because they understood. The ability to argue both sides gives you power over both. In modern application, next time you need to persuade someone who disagrees, don't ignore their position. State it clearly, even strengthen it. Then, after you've shown you understand it fully, introduce the complexity they're missing, the nuance, the other layer, and suddenly, you're not opponents. You're thinking partners, and they're far more likely to shift toward your view. Because you didn't make them wrong, you made them incomplete, and everyone wants to be more complete. Protagoras taught, to know both sides is to transcend both. But here's where it gets darker. Because the Sophists understood something else, something about human vulnerability. about the moments when people are most susceptible to persuasion, and they used it. The Sophists identified what we now call cognitive openings, moments when the mind's defenses are down, when beliefs are fluid, when suggestion becomes reality. These moments include uncertainty, transition, emotional intensity, exhaustion, desire. In these states, people are highly suggestible, not because they're weak, because the mind is in flux. And the Sophists taught their students, this is when you speak, not to manipulate, but because this is when truth can actually land. When someone is certain, they cannot hear you. When someone is uncertain, they're listening for guidance. That's your moment. Here's what this looks like in practice. Someone is considering a major life change. They're uncertain, conflicted. This is not the time for complex arguments. This is the time for clarity, for direction, for a simple, powerful frame that helps them decide. You don't convince them. You articulate what they're already feeling, but couldn't express. And when you do that, they don't feel manipulated. They feel understood, and they move. The Sophists called this speaking to the moment, not to the mind. It's not about having the best argument. It's about having the right words, at the right time, for the right person. This is mastery, and it requires something most people never develop. Attention. Deep attention. Not to your own thoughts, but to the other person's state. Gorgias would say, the mediocre persuader speaks from preparation. The master persuader speaks from observation. Now let's go deeper into the technique that makes all of this work. The foundation of sophistic communication. Something they called kairos plus telos. The right moment, aimed at the right outcome. Because here's what most people miss. Persuasion is not about winning the argument. Persuasion is about achieving a specific outcome. And sometimes, winning the argument prevents you from getting what you actually want. The Sophists understood this. So they never argued for the sake of arguing. They argued for the sake of outcome. This changes everything. Let me show you. Imagine you're in a meeting. Someone proposes a bad idea. You know it's bad. You could demolish it logically. But here's the question. What outcome do you want? Do you want to be right? Or do you want the group to move in a better direction? If you destroy their idea publicly, you might win the argument, but you'll lose their cooperation. They'll resist you forever. But if you understand telos, you do something else. You acknowledge their idea. Find the useful part, then pivot. That's interesting. What if we took that element and combined it with your better approach? Now they're not losing. They're collaborating. And you get the outcome you want without creating an enemy. This is sophistic thinking. Always ask, what is my telos here? What outcome am I actually trying to achieve? Then use only the language necessary to reach it. No more, no less. Protagoras taught, the wise speaker knows when to be silent. The master speaker knows when to let others think they won. And here's the final layer. The thing that makes all of this actually work. The element that separates manipulation from mastery. Intent. The Sophists were accused of teaching manipulation, and some did. But the greatest Sophists understood something deeper. These techniques work, but only sustainably, when your intent is aligned with truth. Not absolute truth, but situational truth. The truth of what actually serves. Because here's what happens when you use these techniques with corrupt intent. They work, temporarily. Then they backfire, because people sense inauthenticity. Maybe not immediately, but eventually. And when they do, you lose all credibility. Forever. But when you use these techniques with genuine intent, to clarify, to guide, to help someone see what they couldn't see before, they don't feel manipulated. They feel liberated. This is the paradox of sophistic communication. The techniques work best when you care least about winning, when your focus is on truth, on outcome, on service, not on domination. Gorgias, late in life, said something that was rarely recorded. I taught them how to persuade, but I could not teach them why. And without why, the how becomes poison. So here's what the Sophists actually discovered. Language is power. Timing is mastery. Emotion is the gateway. Framing is control. But intention is what makes it all matter. You can learn every technique in this video. You can master rhetoric. You can win every argument. But if you're using it to deceive, to manipulate, to serve only yourself, you become exactly what Plato accused the Sophists of being, a danger. But if you use it to clarify, to illuminate, to help others see more clearly. You become what the greatest sophists actually were, a guide. So here's the question. Now that you know how persuasion really works, now that you understand the techniques that shape reality through language, what will you use them for? The sophists gave you the tools, but they can't answer that question. Only you can. If this opened your eyes to something you felt but couldn't name, if you want to go deeper into the hidden techniques of history's most powerful communicators, hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications. Because here at the Hidden Codex, we don't just study history, we extract the power from it. Next time, we'll explore the dark psychology of Machiavelli and why his real teachings were never in the prince. You don't want to miss that. Until then, choose your words carefully, because now you know they're more powerful than you thought.